Thanks for joining us, Amanda. What does your role as a psychologist involve?
Thanks for having me, Rukmani. As a psychologist at UNSW, we see a lot of students come through for counselling, and counselling is any issue that might come up for the students here at UNSW. My role is to be there as a support to help people navigate what their problems are, and also I guess to really encourage wellbeing, so provide suggestions and ideas of what people can do for better wellbeing. We also run various workshops through the counselling department as well, so I'm involved in those, and I get to do fun things like this today.
That's great. So you specialise in mental health. How important is sleep for our mental health?
Sleep is actually very important for our mental health, and research over the past 10 years has really highlighted quite how much. They've recognised that there is a correlation with good quality sleep and resilience against mental health issues. And conversely, there's a correlation with poor sleep and some of the major mental illnesses like depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. It's not always easy to tell which comes first, but they're definitely related. The better our sleep, the better we are at regulating our emotions as well. And so sleep supports us in managing stress, managing our frustrations, and making judgments through the day.
Yeah. So from your practice, how common are sleep issues for students, and what are the main causes?
So both witnessing it here at CAPS and also seeing through the stats, sleep issues is actually a huge problem for students. The statistics show that a really large percentage of students are getting not enough sleep on a regular basis. And there's many students that I see where one of the presenting issues is I'm not getting enough sleep, or my sleep is all over the place. So it is very common. The causes are very broad, but I think one of the main things is modern lifestyle. So if you think about even as recently as, say, 300 years ago, before there was electricity, before we had radio, before we had computers, before we had 24-hour access to everything, it was really easy to keep a regular cycle. It would get to the end of the day, things would go dark, there'd be very little else to do. People would go to sleep and the sun would come up and it would wake them up, and they had this routine that was very much based on light and day. Now we have so many things set in place that kind of mess with our own circadian rhythm around that. And for students, there's lots of things going on that interfere with that. There's the things a little bit outside of control, like day-to-day stresses, academic pressures, doing shift work, nighttime kind of casual jobs, those sort of things. And then there's more social factors, maybe going out late at night or getting online with people. And as soon as we get online, it's really hard to switch off. So that a lot of that can mess with sleep. And also there's stress around these days, and I guess particularly the last few months, and worry is another factor that interferes with sleep.
So considering all these changes that we now have in modern lifestyle, what are your top tips for students to improve their sleep?
Yeah, that's a good question. With sleep, one of the big things that's actually really important is to think about a concept known as, it's known broadly as sleep hygiene. And sleep hygiene is, based on a whole lot of research, it's basically what the good sleep habits are. And the top of the list with that is to be as regular as possible with sleep. So actually going to bed at more or less the same time each night and waking up at more or less the same time each day actually really helps us to fall asleep and to stay asleep during the night. Weekends, etc., really is tempting to throw that out, but kind of keeping it within an hour is quite a useful structure to do. The other thing to think about is what else might be keeping you awake at night and how to reduce that. So common factors, I will talk about stress in a minute, but there's other common things that just disrupt us going to bed, and one of those is excess consumption of caffeine, often in particular, but alcohol and tobacco also are things that can keep us awake. So there's a bit of a misnomer that if I have a drink it will help me fall asleep, but often if we have too much to drink, we've got all these toxins that our body's fighting to put off, so I can't relax and stay asleep. So watching what you're consuming in terms of drugs and caffeine, etc., but also watching what you're consuming in terms of food, because there are certain foods that our body struggles to digest, and if we're eating in not long before we're trying to go to sleep, our body's not going to let us because it's going to be digesting. So having your meals earlier, and if you are someone who struggles with sleep, even being careful with what sort of foods, so avoiding spicy foods or highly fatty foods late at night, can help you to fall asleep a little bit easier. There's actually a chemical known as L-tryptophan, which is quite common in a lot of foods, that helps our body to relax and helps encourage the release of melatonin, which is the chemical that helps us to go to sleep. And L-tryptophan is found in a lot of healthy foods, really, like your lean proteins, chicken, egg, those sort of foods, milk, complex carbohydrates, and fruit and vegetables. So having a small snack of something with high levels of L-tryptophan can also help encourage sleep. Other things that often disrupt sleep is, I guess, where we go to sleep and our space. So have you got your sleep space set up to actually encourage sleep? And often with students, it's really hard to have a dedicated sleep space that's separate from study space. But I would encourage that as much as possible, you do that. So if you can, study outside of the bedroom. But if you can't, having a ritual where actually you almost put your study stuff to sleep, so cover it up somehow or put it away before you go to bed, can also help with the association of bedtime. Resisting the temptation to study on bed is going to help. Again, it's to have that association with this is the space that I go to sleep. Some other key things around sleep hygiene is trying to get some healthy daylight during the day, so natural light during the day. And I think especially important right now where people are spending a lot of time indoors is even just standing by a window for a few minutes can give you that natural daylight if you can't actually get to go outside. Getting outside is actually better, but if you can just find a place where a bit of natural light comes in, so it doesn't even need to be the sunniest day, and that will help your body to regulate. Exercise is another important factor in helping us to get to sleep at night. So if you do exercise during the day, it will actually tire out your body physically. And when our body is actually physically tired, it's easier for us to fall asleep. And I guess the last one is having a pre-bed ritual. So thinking about what is my routine before bed? What are the signs and signals that I set up to help get my body and my brain ready for bed? So I mentioned the melatonin earlier, and doing things like having a shower, brushing your teeth, putting on your bedclothes, listening to relaxing music, having a herbal tea that might be a nighttime ritual, all of those things that are kind of repeated and can signal to your body that it's time for sleep can actually help you get to sleep.
Those are some really, really good tips. But thinking more specifically about students in quarantine that may be experiencing jet lag, what are some specific tips for them?
Yeah. And both jet lag and quarantine are going to be challenging to sleep. Jet lag because your body doesn't know what's day and night, and quarantine itself because you're kind of in this bubble and all your external routines are taken away. It kind of can create this space where time doesn't feel as structured, and in that our bodies can get confused around when it's time to sleep and when it's time to be awake. So as much as possible, as soon as you kind of return and beginning in that kind of pattern where it is going to be mostly indoors and not external things to remind you of times of day like classes or meeting a friend for dinner, or those sort of things often remind us around the day. When you don't have that, it's really important to set that up yourself. So as much as possible, right from the get-go, plan how to structure your day.
I often also find that I try to go to sleep, but then I become stressed that I can't fall asleep. And then that impacts when I fall asleep. Is there a such thing as perfect sleep, or is this common for a lot of people?
Yeah. And your experience of actually worrying about not being able to get enough sleep is a really common worry, and it's a really common source of insomnia. So people actually not being able to fall asleep because they're worried about not going to sleep. And if you are experiencing that, it is worthwhile getting professional help. But as that general, sometimes I'm a bit worried, am I getting enough sleep, am I not? My answer to that is really we all have days where our sleep is not as good as other days. So we will have some days where either we've got a lot on our mind or we're not 100% well, or something just isn't right and we struggle to fall asleep. And it's really normal to have days like that, and that happening sometimes is not a reason to worry, and it's not going to have any long-term effects on your health or well-being. It's just about, trying your best to have a healthy routine so that you're maximising your opportunities to sleep well.
So I've also found myself spending a lot more time online and on my devices since we started studying online. And that's not just to say I'm doing work, it's just I'm on my devices all the time. And can that impact my sleep?
I feel that our devices are probably one of the biggest problems when it comes to sleep. We use devices a lot. And we don't, as you've said, you use devices for uni, or you might use devices to connect with people, but we also use devices when we're bored. And when we get stuck into this kind of pattern where we're just kind of clicking on one thing after the other, or playing a game non-stop, or scrolling through without really taking in what we're reading, we kind of have almost gone into a zombie type of mode where we're not really mindfully thinking about what we're doing, we're just doing it out of habit. And often what happens when we're in that kind of headspace is our normal signals that tell us that we're tired or we're hungry or actually we really should be doing something else kind of seem to dull, and we lose track of time. So those devices have often been reasons why people are up much later at night than they should be. It's a very normal thing to do.
We know that being on our devices can impact sleep, but what impact does sleep have on our academic performance? I'm asking because is it risky to do an all-nighter to finish an assignment, or for me to study for an exam that's going to be the next day?
That's a great question, because I know from the students that I've seen that Pretty much every student will at some point pull an all-nighter to get work done, or close to an all-nighter to get work done. It's very tempting to stay up to finish something and to sacrifice sleep. The effect that it has, I guess, when we're sleep deprived, we don't concentrate well, our judgment is impaired, and our decision making is impaired. So especially if we are required to do things during the daytime, like an exam, where critical thinking is involved, that will be impaired if we're sleep deprived. So pulling an all-nighter, as tempting as it is not so good for our health and will impact our performance the following day.
We shouldn't be compromising our sleep. In saying that, how much sleep is enough? And is there a thing as too much sleep?
Both important questions. The rule of thumb that comes out of all the research is that the average adult, and when they're talking about adults, they're talking late teens to sort of 60s, needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep. What they have realised is significant impacts happen if you're routinely getting less than 5.5 hours of sleep a night. And the research also shows that if you are getting more sleep than you need, so some people need 10 hours of sleep a night, but for most people that would be too much. And if you're getting more sleep than you need, you don't wake up feeling refreshed. What actually happens is a sort of brain fog and a feeling of lethargy and kind of slowness, and that happens. So too much sleep can actually also impact our performance during the day.
Sure. And considering that we need a certain amount of time to sleep, sometimes I find it really hard to fall asleep, even if I've given myself that amount of time. And that usually happens when I have a lot on my mind. So how can we improve our sleep when we're feeling anxious?
And all the sleep hygiene stuff aside, one of the other most common reasons why people have difficulty falling asleep is because of worries and rumination and anxiety. And that can be about anything and everything. And there are some strategies that you can do. First, to try and relax. So strategies to relax might be, I mentioned earlier, some relaxation music or some gentle stretches. But also doing relaxation mindfulness exercises. There's a lot available on YouTube, and one I particularly like is called a progressive muscle relaxation. And it gets you to do a bit of a body scan where you're tensing and relaxing various parts of your body, and it helps to distract your mind whilst also relaxing your body. So relaxation strategies are very helpful. The other is sometimes those worries are really stubborn and our brain just wants to circulate them. And some of the strategies for dealing with those more stubborn thoughts is actually to take the time to write them down and promise yourself that you will attend to them the following day. So you're kind of giving yourself permission to put them down during the night and that you will pick them up again the next day. So it's getting it out a little bit. The other thing is also thinking about your intent. So I know I'm worried about this now. My intent for tomorrow will be to take XYZ action on those worries. So actually have a little bit of a commitment to yourself to take a small action step that's going to support addressing some of those worries. So you write it down and you think about what you might do the next day. So you're giving yourself permission to let it go. If it is persistent and if it hangs around, I really recommend talking to somebody. So come into CAPS or talk to a friend or a family member, because the more you talk about these things, the easier it is to get perspective and to find a way to put them down.
Amanda, thank you so much. These have been some really helpful things that you've told us. Do you have any final tips for our students?
Look, I guess more than a final tip, I'm thinking a summary of key points, and that's really remember to structure your day Have yourself a nice bedtime routine with a set bedtime and a set wake-up time as well. And remember to switch off your devices for at least an hour before bed. That's it. And be kind to yourself.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and we hope you enjoyed this Q Time session. If you want some more helpful sleep smart tips, please check out UNSW Mind Smart Guides.